And welcome to Newsmakers for inside analysis and behind-the-scenes commentary from Santa Barbara's top journalists and political leaders about the most important news events in our community. I'm Jerry Roberts. Tonight, we look behind these headlines. Advocates charge the city is waging a war on the homeless with new efforts to clean up the streets. City College trustees pick a new leader to tackle a raft of troublesome and volatile problems. Candidates on the east side and the Mesa race to the finish in the final days before the city council election. And later in our political remix segment, we'll hear the panel's predictions for the November 5th election and the latest buzz about 2020 campaigns. Our panel tonight, Josh Molina, who covers politics and policy for Newshawk. Delaney Smith, reporter and editor for the Santa Barbara Independent. And Fire and Police Commissioner Lizzie Rodriguez. Thank you all for coming. So Josh, there's been a whole bunch of ordinances kicking around about sort of cracking down on shopping carts and personal belongings, but now the Salvation Army has withdrawn its plan to build 14 units on the east side for formerly homeless people. What's going on? Why is all this kind of seemingly anti-homeless stuff coming up now?
Right, so we'll talk about the ordinances, but first, sort of the latest, the breaking news, the Salvation Army has decided to abandon its plan to build permanent supportive housing on the east side. And this is in direct response to the community outrage and backlash that they received. They said that they don't want to do this, that it's not worth it. They are trying to get this grant money, this HEAP grant money, and they want to move forward. And they know that this is going to be a long community battle. So they just sort of cut their ties and said, okay, community, you talk about wanting homeless services, but you don't want them here. So let's go focus on all the other good work we do in the community, and you can deal with the homeless issue in a different way. So that was the big news this week. They said, we're done, we're out of it. Now, the city of Santa Barbara and City Attorney Ariel Colon is working to shape some ordinances that have a huge impact on the homeless. They want an ordinance that requires grocery store owners to take back their shopping carts. Lots of abandoned shopping carts all over Santa Barbara. Homeless people use them for their things, and so they want to figure out a way to require big operators to take them back. It's part of the visual clutter, but it hurts Santa Barbara's reputation when there's lots of shopping carts, hurts tourism. Of course, the downtown businesses are not happy. In addition to that, they're saying, hey, if you keep your belongings on the sidewalk for more than 4 hours, we're gonna go in there and take it. And that one is also controversial. The city kind of hit a roadblock with the shopping carts this week. The ACLU sent them a letter and said, stop. And so they withdrew it from the council meeting.
You watch a council, so I haven't heard this sentiment, this general sentiment, which could be characterized as anti-homeless, from anybody on the council, with the possible exception of Randy once in a while. Where is this coming from? Is this just coming up from the bowels of the bureaucracy, or does the business community have a side door in, or what's going on?
Business communities definitely have a side door in. I mean, especially when we're talking about lower state, like, yes, the city has played a role in making it difficult for businesses to prosper, but business owners have time and time again complained about homeless people being in front of their businesses and scaring off customers. It's more of a statewide issue, though. Homelessness is a California problem. So this is just finally kind of trickling down here to Santa Barbara, and they're throwing ordinances at it, trying to make it work. And I don't know if they're the best ordinances. You know?
Yeah, I mean, it all sounds like a lot of work for the cops.
I think this
don't they already have a very high percentage of response calls about these kinds of issues?
Yes, and this would be considered one of the low priority calls. So there's 4 levels of response calls for the police, and homeless in front of a business would not be considered a high priority call because it's not life threatening. And I think, Delaney, you made a very good point. This is a statewide issue. I think the reason why these ordinances are being created is because folks have been asking, business owners have been asking the police to do something about the homeless issue. Being homeless in itself is not illegal. The actions that homeless do, because they don't have homes, like drinking in the streets or urinating in public, or loitering. Those things are illegal, but they're only illegal because they don't have a home to go to.
And remember a few months back too, this isn't actually just coming now. I mean, when they took the benches, and they either took the benches away or put the railings on there so that homeless people couldn't lay down and sleep on them. This is just kind of rebubbling to the surface, but it's not the first time.
These kind of seem like around the margins ways of addressing the issue. I mean, how big a deal is this Salvation Army thing quitting? Because that seemed to be like a substantive, real thing. This is, kind of a strategy that we could pursue. The fact that it got driven out of town basically is not a good sign.
Well, the Salvation Army project is a big deal because it's part of the overall narrative of what's happening throughout the city. The east side feels as though it's been targeted by these high-density housing projects, and for them, they feel as it's another example of city of Santa Barbara trying to solve its problems in their neighborhood, in their community. The homeless issue has been ongoing. It's not going away. Ariel Colon, he's more of an activist attorney than
The
previous
city attorney, yeah.
than previous city attorneys. Back in old days, back
In
at
your
the,
days,
the,
maybe.
the days of
Stop.
the early days, or when we worked together at the News Press, Dan Wallace,
That is the old days, you're right.
city attorney Steve Wiley, they were invisible. They would talk very rarely during council meetings, and they would speak only when the council got a little bit off the rails.
Does that
Ariel's a
reflect-
frequent commentator during meetings.
Does that reflect a lack of assertiveness on the part of the mayor and the council?
Yeah, it reflects a novice council, and it reflects a council that is more concerned about saying what they think is the right thing to please their party backing, as opposed to back then there was less of that. You had more people experienced who were speaking their mind. There's a lack of leadership on the city council. Paul Casey, the city administrator, he is the one who controls sort of everything, and the council members are just sort of doing their political sort of posturing. There's a vacuum, so Ariel's got to do more, Paul Casey has to do more. The leadership that's happening from those seven is political. It's not necessarily on an issue by issue basis.
But it's not substantive.
Right.
It's symbolic. All right, so the city college trustees, Delaney, voted unanimously in picking a new president of the college. I mean, you couldn't get all those people to vote together to order lunch. I mean,
I know.
They must have really liked this guy. Who is he?
So he was the candidate who's coming from Kansas City. I was a little bit surprised they picked him as well, actually, just because during the public forums, Kenneth Lawson was a lot more laid back. He was walking around the stage. He was more loose with his answers, and Dr. Goswami was more very just formal, and his answers were direct and to the point. But I think the reason he was picked is with his fiscal experience. He talked about his fundraising experience. He's raised over $20 million for programs in the past at other colleges he's worked for, and right now at this time of budget cuts in California, that's what we need. We need someone who knows how to pull in funds from elsewhere to make up for it. So that's really it.
You think that was the difference?
I think that was much more the difference. Dr. Lawson also as well, he wasn't a president before. He was a vice president, so he didn't have as much experience. When it came to the fiscal questions, he seemed a little less experienced. I think that he...
So the fiscal stuff is going to be more important than the kind of racial issues that we heard a lot about last year that you, for example, reported on at great length. I mean, is that just sort of fading away now, or?
I don't think it's fading away at all, at least from the public forums, because of course we don't really know what the trustees talked about because this all happened in closed session. But during the public forums, I think Dr. Goswami was really surprised because he started off his spiel by saying, I've read in the newspapers about all this bad stuff happening here. Right. He's like, I've been reading about all this bad stuff. He's like, but I believe that this college is 99% good and it's only the 1% that we're really hearing about. And I think he was proven wrong pretty quickly. I think saying that as an outsider who's not even from the state definitely wasn't the right move because He got 5, 6, 7 questions from the audience that were all about equity.
This
all
is the
about
guy they
mission.
picked or not the guy?
That's the guy they picked. So I think he was a little taken aback. I thought that was interesting. Yeah, that's why I was a little surprised he was picked. But at the same time, he did reference that at his college that he came from in Kansas City, they had every year they had annual equity climate surveys, very similar to the one that we just had for the first time at City
Didn't come out
College.
so well.
Ours came out really poorly. Supposedly at his colleges were getting better every year after year. So whatever he was doing there seemed to be working, but he did not elaborate at all publicly about what that was.
So, Josh, what is the mood of the faculty at City College? I mean, does this guy have any idea what he's in for? I guess. I mean, are people? I mean, your colleagues, do they think it's a good pick, or do they not think about it too much? Or it was a pretty disruptive year.
I can't speak of the mood of the faculty, but
Well, sure you can.
I think that Goswami was the more experienced and on paper most qualified. And it's probably a case where they interviewed on a public stage at the Garvin Theater, and it's a presentation, it's a show. And it's probably a case where Goswami maybe didn't present as well as Lawson did, but when it came to actual experience, interviewing, talking, he was on paper more qualified. I don't think anyone knows what they're walking into. They possibly can't. Just like the superintendent of the Santa Barbara Unified School District. Santa Barbara's a culture, and you may think you understand how things work from wherever you came from, but we're so unique, and we've seen lots of super important people, super intelligent people fail in this community because they assume, they think they know it all, they underestimate the importance of getting to know people and having relationships.
You're shaking your head. Do you agree with Josh's mansplaining here?
I don't think Josh is mansplaining at this point. We'll give it a few minutes and he
Okay.
may.
Let me tell you how
there
it
you
is.
go.
Okay.
There it is. However, I think he is speaking what's true about our community. It's very unique. We have unique challenges. I think, from what I understand, all of the top candidates for this position all had significant equity background. So that was one of their number one criteria. I think in order for someone to succeed, they need to have a combination of being able to affirm people's experience, reflect back what they shared, and then also have concrete procedures and policy in place. And I'm not sure that either the interim or the former had a combination of both of those.
So you think this guy will succeed, or others have failed? How long will he be here? What's the over/under on
Man, that's tough.
How long is his
at least
contract for? 3 years?
That is still under discussion. They're discussing that, I believe, November 12th, but don't quote me on that. But coming up midway through November,
We
they're
won't
going to be
tell anyone that.
they're going to be discussing the details of his contract, and he actually starts in his position in January. So we don't know yet.
Do we know how much he's getting paid?
That's all going to be discussed this month. January, that should all be released. But I think he has a chance, at least when he does talk about his equity climate surveys, and they getting better and better at his school before. I mean, that's a concept that our college had never even heard of until like over the summer. Yeah, so at least he comes from a background of that being important. Although he didn't elaborate on it publicly, he has some kind of knowledge if he's been doing these regular surveys. So I think there's a chance.
You heard it there. Delaney says there's no way this guy fails. Okay, we'll write that down. October 23rd.
She'll be at the New York Times by then, so don't worry about it.
Oh.
Or else Nick will be working for her. That could be the other way it goes. Oh, Nick Welsh on special assignment tonight. So Lizzie, just a couple days left before the November 5th election. Well, there's no election because all you have to do is mail in your ballot, except for those people who don't know how to lick an envelope. But so who looks the strongest? Who
Well, I
looks the
have to say,
strongest
I
on
think-
District 1 and 2?
I think there's district envy going on in Santa Barbara because there's only two districts that are voting. You see a lot of signs for 1 and 2 in other districts. So I think that there's other. So if it was a large city election, I think there would be a huge turnout. But because there's only 2 districts, there are other districts rooting for their favorites. And from what I can tell around town, Jason Dominguez has a lot of lawn signs in his own community. Alejandra has a lot of lawn signs outside of her community.
Really?
Terry Jory has plenty, both in and
Yeah.
outside of her community.
Also in her front yard.
And-
Have you
and
driven up there?
I have, and the animals love her even. There's a lot of social media photographs with animals saying, vote for Terry Jory.
You know, I just see this guy Campbell everywhere. I mean, he's bought ads all over, Newshawk and.
I know where he's not bought at.
Well, he pulled them out of the Independent. But Ed Hatt, he had a piece on Ed Hatt today with his Howard Beale spiel about homelessness. He got a huge reaction. Do you think he's got a chance, or do you think he's just a spoiler for Jordan, Mike Jordan, on the Mesa?
I think if he wants to win a seat on the city council, he needs to hook up with some people who know how to run campaigns, who know how to package and market him. He speaks to a large amount of people who agree with him, but it's hard to break through the Democratic sort of machine, and we're probably going to see a Democrat win that seat. You can have great ideas, and you can.
So a Democrat being Mike Jordan or Terry Jory?
Is Mike Jordan really a Democrat?
He's endorsed by the Democratic Party?
That's true, but he just registered as Democrat for this election.
So did Oscar. And Oscar's going to be the mayor.
True.
You heard it here first. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Josh.
So yes.
So you think it's Jordan or
I mean, there's a couple possibilities. There's a whole bunch of people who like Terry Jory. There's a whole bunch of people who like Mike Jordan. There's some who like Tavis. There's some who like Luis. Those are all liberal, moderate liberals. If they all split the vote and Brian Campbell just has the conservative vote, maybe he does better than we think. But I think conventional wisdom says it's coming down to Jory and Jordan.
Mm-hmm. And I think Jordan does have a conservative base as well. Mm-hmm. So he's moderate enough that he can be on both.
He's afraid, though. He thinks Campbell's pulling votes from him. He is concerned.
Well, he is definitely pulling votes. Jordan is endorsed by the Democratic Party, which in that district might hurt him because Randy Rouse has been the elected official.
Right.
And Randy Rouse is, I don't know how he's registered, but he's way more conservative than anyone else on the city council. And he is somebody they like, and he's kind of fits that mode. So you're endorsed by the Democrats, works on the west side, works on the east side, not as well on the Mesa, but I still think bottom line is they have canvassers, they have people walking, they have people making phone calls. If you're a Democrat and you don't really care who it is, you're just going to vote for the Democratic
So
endorsed
is that
candidate.
going to be true on the east side? Alejandra Gutierrez has the endorsement. Jason is on the outs with the party, long has been. Is that going to make a big difference?
I don't think the Democratic endorsement is really going to make a big difference on the east side, actually. But I do still, and I know that my opinion might be contested a little bit, but I do feel like Alejandra is going to win this. But not because of her endorsement. I feel like she's going to win just because the east side has historically had such a low voter turnout. And she's made it a point to educate people about how to register to vote, how to vote. She's made the deadlines for mailing ballots and really public. She works with her potential constituents in the district all the time at her job at the Franklin Center, and she tells people day in, day out, this is how you vote, this is what you do, this is why it's important, blah, 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 blah. Like, just, she hammers it into people, and she's gone door to door 8-9 hours a day for weeks on end every weekend. So I really think that she might actually get it.
So Jason was doing a touchdown dance about the Salvation Army project being shut down, even though the night they had the big hearing, you couldn't tell where he was on it. Is that going to be a big issue? Is it going to be a voting issue for people?
You know, I think for the folks that live in the East Side district, I don't think that's going to be the turning point for them. And actually, I'm going to go opposite and say that I have a feeling Jason's going to win. He's a familiar name. He's a familiar vote. And while Alejandra might be well known and endorsed by the Democratic Party, I think the East Side is pretty satisfied with Jason.
And that's the thing about district elections. Nobody knows nothing because the universe of voters is so small that almost anything can happen. do people know on the east side that Jason's running for 2 offices at the same time, that he's going to be on
I'm
the
sure
ballot?
it's the first thing out of Alejandra's mouth.
Do you think it is?
I mean, it's definitely a play. I just don't think they care. I mean,
You don't?
I agree.
well, I think that political people care and journalists care, but I think in that community, people care more about how you come across one-on-one. And if Jason looks you in the eye and tell you, I want to serve the city council, but I also have an opportunity to serve the city council.
But he doesn't say that. He just says,
I
I'm
mean,
running for, right?
Actually,
well, you go.
One-on-one,
I
he
will
does.
go. I will follow up on whatever you say.
One-on-one, he does say that. He says, I am committed for you in this role, and there's also a lot of work to do on a larger scale, and I can do that as well. I think the thing that Jason has in his favor is that he has addressed the issues that are important for his constituents. That's homeless, parks, and housing. Those are the 3 things that he's been really pounding on for several years. And so while the Salvation Army home would have been perfect, the way that he opposed it was saying it's not great for the folks who live
Well, he
here.
opposed it by saying it was toxic waste dump or something.
Yeah,
didn't he?
that
was a little.
I mean,
over the line.
that shook me when I heard that. That was a gnarly comparison to make, to compare human beings to a toxic waste dump. But the difference is, especially with this election being the mail-in ballot, a lot of the East Side, Jason won last time with hundreds of votes. So, like, a lot of East Side constituents, they're not going to be actually taking the time to fill out a mail-in ballot unless someone tells them, hey, this is how you do it, here it is. And Jason isn't doing that. Alejandra is legitimately going door to door and putting it into people's hands and telling them this is how you do it, and working in that. A, she grew up in the community, but B, working in the schools in that community for 20 years. She knows parents, she knows kids who've grown up and graduated. She's been like, hey, do this. This is why it's important. So that's why I really think this is going to be different this time.
So
I think that if the voters that don't normally vote, because I think you're right, the folks who she serves in the community are typically the voters that do not vote.
Right. Yeah.
They may be eligible, some may be undocumented, but they're receiving services in the community through her, so she's a familiar and trusted face. However, they tend to not be the engaged citizens who vote. So if she's able to get them to turn in their ballot, then yes,
All
she'll.
right, but you're predicting Jason
I'm
will win.
predicting
You're
Jason.
predicting Alejandra.
Mhm.
Josh, break the tie, and
Gonna
then I'll
be-
make it again.
It's going to be really close.
Oh,
But,
he mansplained.
but
Yes.
conventional wisdom says Jason's going to keep his seat.
We shall see.
And
Right.
should he and then get elected elsewhere, it would be a great appointment for Alejandra.
So if he loses,
That's true.
well, that's true. That's a good point.
Yeah.
If he loses, does that just destroy his
He has
chances
no
of being
He has no
elected
chance
to the
of winning
assembly?
the
Then
assembly seat, whether he wins or loses.
you know, I spent some time with your man Jonathan Abood today, running for the assembly, and you might be onto something there by predicting him early on that he's going to be.
Oh, now you agree with me.
I'm
I'm
just
the
saying you
prophet now.
might.
Okay.
You might be. All right.
By the way, that's no reflection on Jason's qualifications, but the Democratic Party endorsed candidate after the primary is going, it's going to be Abood or Kathy Moreo. It's going to be one of those.
after the primary.
Yeah.
After the primary.
It has to be. It'd be a stunner if it wasn't.
All right. What about District 2? What about on the Mesa? Now, by the way, check tomorrow's Newsmakers blog, and you'll get all the details about our special Pick the Winners of District 2 contest with amazing, great prizes. Just send us an email with the 1 through 5 order that you forecast of the candidates, as well as the tiebreaker, how many people will vote. What's your take on District 2?
Who's going to win or what's
Yeah,
going on
yeah,
there?
yeah.
Well, it's going to be between Jory and Jordan.
Yeah, we knew that.
Jory.
So-
Except unless it's not, yeah.
If Jory
I
doesn't
don't-
win the election, she should definitely win a prize for most hardworking candidate.
So you think Mike's going to win?
I think if it's a citywide election, Mike Jordan comes in number 1. I think Terry Jory is going to surprise people. I can't call it. It's too close to call, but I think Terry Jory probably has the edge right now, and Mike's going to have to work really hard between now and Election Day.
What do you think?
Terry Jory.
I'm going to go more kind of like Josh said. Yes, if it was a citywide election, Michael Jordan would win 100%. I mean, he's been on several commissions in the past. He has experience. But again, with this district election thing, Terry Jory is really well known on the Mesa. And she, I mean, I've never heard of someone campaigning so hard for such a small local seat. But
So the homeless issue on the Mesa is not that big a deal that Campbell could break through.
I think the people who are conservative are going to vote for Campbell no matter what. All the homeless are by 7-Eleven and City College. I don't think there's a lot of, I mean, I don't live there, but yeah, I don't think that's the resonating issue on the Mesa.
All right, we got to leave it there. So thank you to Josh Molina, Lizzie Rodriguez, and Delaney Smith. Thank you all for watching. Please visit our website, newsmakerswithjr.com. to find my blog posts on politics and media in Santa Barbara and beyond.
Great. Keep it on.
And should your insomnia be particularly gnarly, check out our YouTube channel, where you'll find an archive of past shows and interviews, including our 4 special programs on the campaigns for City Council. And finally, don't forget to enter the special contest to predict the results in the City Council race on the Mesa. You'll find details on our site. Thanks again to our director, JP Montalvo, and to our crew, Brandon, Frank, Ryan, and Mark. And as always, our senior, top-ranking, high-powered, high-energy executive producer, Hap Freund. Thanks and have a happy Halloween.